The Galactic Council chamber stretched across 3 kilometers of polished stone. Representatives from 47 species sat in their designated zones, breathing different atmospheres and existing at different temperatures. The humans occupied a small section near the back, a modest delegation for a species that had joined the galactic community only 30 years ago. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the speaking platform. Her dark suit looked plain compared to the glowing scales and crystalline armor of other delegates. She was speaking to the Krell Dominion, a massive empire that controlled 12 star systems and had just declared its intention to seize 3 human colony worlds. "We understand your position," Chen said carefully, "but we must ask you to reconsider, please. You really don't want to make us angry." The chamber erupted in noise. The Krell War Prime, a creature that stood 3 meters tall with 6 arms and armor-plated skin, made a sound that the translators rendered as laughter. Other species joined in. The clicking and whistling and rumbling filled the vast space. "Angry?" the War Prime said. His voice boomed through the chamber. "You speak of anger? You who surrender at every confrontation? You who negotiate away your rights rather than fight?" Chen's face remained calm, but those who knew her well could see the tension in her shoulders. "We negotiate because we choose to. We compromise because we prefer peace. But those choices do not mean we are unable to defend ourselves." "Then defend yourselves against this," the War Prime declared. "The 3 worlds you call New Hope, Terra Nova, and Far Garden now belong to the Krell Dominion. Your colonists have 3 days to evacuate. After that, any humans remaining will be removed by force." Chen looked around the chamber. She saw the expressions on the faces of other delegates. Some looked sympathetic. Most looked indifferent. A few seemed amused. Humans had been backing down from conflicts for 30 years. The galaxy had learned to expect it. "This is a mistake," Chen said quietly. "We have tried to tell you. All of you. We say please not because we are weak. We say please because we remember what happens when we stop saying it." The War Prime made a dismissive gesture with 2 of his arms. "Your words are empty, human. Your threats are meaningless. We have studied your species. You have no warrior culture. Your military is small. Your weapons are standard. You pose no threat to the Krell Dominion." Chen stood silent for a long moment. Then she bowed her head slightly. "Very well, we tried. Let the record show that we tried." She turned and walked back to the human section. The other delegates watched her go. Most had already lost interest. The Krell-human dispute was settled. It would be a minor footnote in galactic history. 20 minutes later, Chen sat in her private office aboard the human embassy station. The office was small and functional, like everything humans built. She touched a control. On her desk, and a holographic interface appeared, in the air before her. "Open secure channel to Earth. Priority, code Midnight Sun." The hologram flickered, and resolved into the face of Secretary General Marcus Webb. He was an old man now, with white hair and deep lines in his face. He had been young during the last great human war, before first contact, before humanity learned there were other intelligent species in the universe. "Sarah," he said, "tell me we have another option." "We don't, Marcus." I gave them every chance. I practically begged them to walk away. They wouldn't listen. Webb closed his eyes. "How many colony worlds are they taking?" 3, 50,000 colonists total. They're giving us 3 days to evacuate. And if we comply, they'll take more. You know how it works. The other species will see us as prey. We'll lose everything we've built out here. Webb was silent for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. "I had hoped we'd never have to do this. We worked so hard to become something different." "I know," Chen said, "but we're out of options. They didn't just refuse our offer. They laughed at us, Marcus. They think our warnings are jokes." Webb straightened in his chair. His face hardened into an expression Chen had seen in history books but never in person. It was the face of humanity at war. "Very well. I'm authorizing Protocol Midnight Sun. God help us all. God help them." The hologram vanished. Chen sat alone in her office for a few minutes, thinking about what was coming. Then she opened another channel, this one to the human colony worlds under threat. "This is Ambassador Chen to all colony administrations. Begin evacuation procedures immediately. You have 72 hours to get everyone off planet. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill." In the Krell home system, War Prime Kethrak celebrated his easy victory. He had claimed 3 worlds without firing a shot. The humans had proven to be exactly what he expected: weak, scared, and unwilling to fight. He called his officers together and began planning which human colonies to claim next. He did not know that across human space, ancient systems were coming online. Military bases that had been abandoned for decades suddenly blazed with activity. Shipyards that had been building cargo vessels for 30 years retooled their assembly lines overnight. Weapons that had been locked away after first contact were being loaded onto ships. In the depths of Earth's oceans, in the hearts of hollow asteroids, in secret facilities on the far side of the moon, humanity prepared for war. They had spent 3 decades trying to be something different, trying to be better than their bloody history. They had said please. They had compromised. They had warned again and again. Now they were done asking. The Krell warships arrived at New Hope on schedule. Admiral Thex commanded the fleet from his flagship, the dominant Fang. He expected minimal resistance. Humans had proven themselves cowards. 3 days had passed. The colonists should have evacuated. Scan the planet, Thex ordered. Admiral, his sensor officer, reported. The planet is empty. No life signs in any of the settlements. They actually left, Thex felt satisfaction. Of course they did. Deploy the landing teams. We take possession of the colony. The landing began smoothly. Krell soldiers descended to the empty human cities. The buildings were intact, the infrastructure functioning. The humans had abandoned billions of credits worth of equipment and construction. It made the victory even sweeter. Then the power grid shut down. Every city went dark simultaneously. What happened? Thex demanded. Unknown, Admiral. The reactors just stopped, all of them. Then the water systems failed. The air processors stopped. The communications arrays went dead. Within an hour, the colony was completely non-functional. Every system had been remotely disabled. The Krell landing team stood in dead cities surrounded by useless technology. Pull them back, Thex ordered. Our engineers will make it work. Before the shuttles could launch for pickup, the sensors detected something approaching. Ships. Lots of ships. They appeared at the edge of the system, dozens of them moving fast. Battle stations. Thex commanded. Finally, the humans show their military. Prepare to engage. But the approaching objects weren't warships. They were asteroids. Small ones, each about 50 meters across. The Krell crews watched in confusion as the asteroids approached, changed trajectory with small thruster burns, and accelerated toward the planet. They're going to bombard their own colony? An officer said in disbelief. The colony is already useless, another officer replied. They destroyed everything when they left. The asteroids fell from the sky. They hit the cities with tremendous force. Buildings that had taken years to construct vanished in seconds. The entire colony infrastructure was obliterated in a matter of hours. The Krell landing teams barely escaped with their lives. Thex stared at the displays showing the destruction. They destroyed their own colony rather than let us have it. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission. It's from the humans. A hologram appeared on the bridge. It showed a human in a military uniform. A woman with gray hair and cold eyes. I am General Amanda Torres of the Earth Defense Force. You were warned. You did not listen. The colonies you claim no longer exist. Neither will your fleet if you do not leave this system immediately. Thex activated his own transmission. You dare threaten me? I command 200 warships. Your small fleet is no match. His words stopped as something appeared on the sensors. Something big. A human ship emerged from behind New Hope's moon. But this wasn't a colony transport or a cargo vessel. This was something the Krell had never seen before. The ship was dark, almost invisible against space. It was massive, larger than Thex's flagship. Weapons ports lined its hull, hundreds of them. That's a dreadnought, Thex's tactical officer whispered. The humans said they didn't build military dreadnoughts. They lied, Thex said. No, Torres said, still visible on the hologram. We didn't lie. We said we chose not to have a large military. We never said we couldn't build one. We just preferred not to. The dreadnought fired, not at the Krell ships, at their communication satellites. In 3 seconds, every Krell satellite in the system was destroyed. The Krell fleet was blind and deaf, cut off from their home system. Now you understand, Torres said. You're fighting humans. We don't fight with honor. We don't give you a fair chance. We studied war for 10,000 years before you climbed down from your trees. We know every trick, every tactic, every way to hurt an enemy. More ships appeared, fast attack vessels that moved unlike anything the Krell had encountered. They didn't attack the warships directly. Instead, they destroyed the supply ships, the fuel tankers, the ammunition transports. They crippled the fleet without firing a shot at the warships themselves. "Retreat," Thex ordered. "All ships return to home system." But the human ships had positioned themselves at all the jump points. The Krell fleet was trapped. Torres spoke again. "You can surrender now. Power down your weapons and we'll let you leave. Or you can fight and we'll destroy every single one of your ships. Your choice." "You have 1 minute to decide." Thex looked at his officers. He saw fear in their eyes. They were warriors trained from birth to fight. But this wasn't war as they understood it. This was something else. Something cold and calculated and utterly ruthless. "How?" Thex said. "How did you hide all of this? We studied your species for years before making our claim." "You studied what we let you see," Torres replied. "You saw colonies and trading ships and diplomats who said please. You never saw what we kept locked away. You never asked why we kept saying please." In the Krell home system, War Prime Kethrak finally received word of what was happening at New Hope. The reports made no sense. The humans were supposed to be weak. They were supposed to run away. He called an emergency meeting of his war council. Before they could assemble, every communication satellite in the Krell home system exploded. Human ships appeared in orbit around the Krell homeworld. They had traveled through unknown jump points, emerging where they should have been impossible to reach. A transmission reached every Krell command center. "We asked you not to make us angry. You chose not to listen. Now you will learn what happens when humans stop saying please." The siege of the Krell Dominion had begun. Across the galaxy, other species received the same message. Every government, every military command, every intelligence agency learned the same truth. Humanity had been holding back. For 30 years, they had been hiding their true capabilities. They had said please not because they were weak, but because they were trying to avoid showing what they could really do. Now there was no more please. Now there was only war. The Galactic Council held an emergency session 3 weeks after the war began. Representatives arrived in a state of shock. Many demanded that humanity be stopped. Others argued for caution. All of them were afraid. Ambassador Chen stood at the speaking platform once more. She looked tired. Dark circles showed under her eyes, but her voice remained steady. "You demanded this meeting," she said, "so here I am. What do you want?" The Zephron ambassador, a floating jellyfish-like creature, pulsed with agitated colors. "We want you to stop. The Krell Dominion is in ruins. Their fleet is destroyed. Their supply lines are gone. Their home system is under siege." "This is madness." "This is war," Chen replied. "You've all fought wars. Don't pretend to be shocked by what war looks like." "But you're not fighting a war," the Thalid representative said. His fungal body trembled. "You're committing systematic destruction. You're not trying to win. You're trying to eliminate them." Chen was quiet for a moment. Then she touched a control, and a hologram appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed Earth, but not the Earth of today. This was old footage from before first contact. The image showed cities in flames. Mushroom clouds rising from multiple continents. Millions dying in an instant. "This is what humans do to each other when we go to war," Chen said. "This is from our World War III. We nearly destroyed ourselves. Billions died. Our planet was poisoned. We came so close to extinction that for 100 years afterward, we couldn't talk about it without crying." The image changed. It showed humans in the aftermath. Cities being rebuilt, treaties being signed, children being taught never to let it happen again. "We rebuilt," Chen continued. "We learned. We created laws and systems and philosophies all designed to control our violent instincts. We made being polite into a way of life. We said please and thank you not because it was natural to us, but because we were terrified of what we became when we stopped saying it." Another image appeared. This one showed Ambassador Chen herself, younger, standing before the Krell War Prime weeks earlier. The audio played. "Please, you really don't want to make us angry." "I meant that," Chen said. "I was begging him. I was begging all of you, because I knew what would happen if they pushed us. I knew what humanity becomes when we decide that please isn't working anymore." The Zephron ambassador pulsed dark purple. "Then stop now. End this before it goes further." "The Krell have learned their lesson. Everyone has learned their lesson. Have they?" Chen asked. She touched another control. New information appeared in the hologram. Intelligence reports. Military communications. Plans drawn up by 6 different species for attacks on human colonies once the Krell conflict weakened human forces. The chamber fell silent. "You all thought we were weak," Chen said. "The Krell attacked us and 6 other species prepared to take advantage. The Vraks were planning to seize our mining operations. The Keldan hierarchy was going to claim our agricultural worlds. The Thalid Collective was already moving ships into position. The accused species tried to protest, but Chen continued speaking, her voice rising. "You all saw us as prey. You thought our kindness was weakness. You thought our warnings were bluffs. So no, we're not stopping, not yet. Not until every single species in this galaxy understands that humanity's restraint is a choice, not a limitation." A new ambassador stood up. This was the Archon representative, an ancient species that had been part of the galactic community for thousands of years. She was old enough to have witnessed hundreds of wars. "Ambassador Chen," the Archon said carefully, "we understand your anger. But what you're describing isn't just war, it's terror. You want us to be afraid of you?" "Yes," Chen said simply. "Because fear will make you cautious. Fear will make you think before attacking. Fear will make you remember what happens when you ignore human warnings." She pulled up historical files, records from humanity's own past. The images showed warfare across millennia. Swords and spears giving way to guns and bombs. Chemical weapons. Nuclear weapons. Biological weapons. Weapons designed not just to kill but to terrorize. "Humans understand violence in a way you don't," Chen said. "We've been killing each other since we learned to sharpen stones. We've committed genocides. We've destroyed entire civilizations. We've invented 1,000 ways to hurt each other, and then we felt guilty about it and tried to become better." The hologram changed again. It showed human history after first contact. 3 decades of peaceful cooperation, humans helping other species, humans sharing technology, humans always compromising, always backing down, always saying please. "We tried so hard to be different," Chen said, and now her voice was raw with emotion. "We wanted to prove that we could be something other than killers. We wanted to show the galaxy that humans could change. We said please 10,000 times. We negotiated when we could have fought. We compromised when we could have taken. And you mistook that for weakness." She turned off the hologram and faced the assembled ambassadors directly. "The Krell will survive. Their species will continue, but their empire is finished. They will never threaten anyone again. And every other species that considered attacking humanity will think very carefully before acting on those thoughts." "This is not justice," the Zephyron ambassador said. "This is revenge." "No," Chen replied. "Revenge would be destroying their homeworld. Revenge would be hunting down every Krell in the galaxy. This is a lesson. A very expensive, very painful lesson that we tried desperately to avoid teaching." The Archon ambassador stood again. "And what happens when this lesson is learned? Will humanity return to saying please?" Chen looked at her for a long time. "I don't know," she said finally. "I hope so. But that depends on whether the galaxy learns the right lesson. If you learn that humans should never be attacked, then yes, we'll go back to being polite neighbors. But if you learn that humans should be attacked while they're distracted, or attacked in overwhelming numbers, or attacked in some clever way you think we won't see coming." She left the sentence unfinished. The chamber remained silent. Every ambassador understood the implication. Humanity had shown restraint by choice. If that choice was challenged again, there might be no restraint at all. The Vraks Confederacy made their move 3 months into the Krell conflict. Their military strategists had studied the situation carefully. Human forces were concentrated around Krell space. Human attention was focused on the siege. It seemed like the perfect opportunity. The Vraks sent a battle fleet to claim the human mining colony at Kepler Station. The station orbited a resource-rich asteroid belt and produced rare elements crucial for jump drive construction. The Vraks expected minimal defense. They expected an easy victory. They were catastrophically wrong. The Vraks fleet arrived to find Kepler Station defended by what appeared to be a small human patrol group. Commander Vrith, leading the Vraks forces, felt confident. His 100 warships outnumbered the human defenders 10-1. "Human vessels," Vrith transmitted. "You are ordered to surrender Kepler Station to the Vraks Confederacy. Comply immediately or be destroyed." The response came from a human captain named Zhang. Her voice was cold. "Negative. This is human territory. Leave now or face the consequences." Vrith almost laughed. You have 10 ships. I have 100. Your choice is simple, surrender or die. You misunderstand, Zhang replied. Those aren't your only choices. The Vrax fleet moved into attack formation. Then Kepler Station itself opened fire. What the Vrax had thought was a mining facility revealed weapon systems more powerful than most dreadnoughts. The station's asteroids weren't just being mined. They were being weaponized. Rocks the size of buildings launched at the Vrax fleet. They accelerated to tremendous speeds guided by thrusters and AI targeting systems. Ships that had survived hundreds of battles were torn apart by glorified stones moving fast enough to punch through their armor. Retreat, Vrith ordered. But the human patrol ships had already moved to block the escape routes. They weren't trying to fight the Vrax fleet directly. They were hurting them, pushing them into kill zones where the station's weapons had optimal firing solutions. Vrith's flagship took a hit from an asteroid. The impact sheared off 2 of its engine pods. The ship spun out of control, emergency systems screaming. Through his viewport, Vrith watched his fleet being systematically destroyed. How? He transmitted on all frequencies. How did you know we were coming? Zhang's face appeared on his display. We didn't know it would be you specifically, but we knew someone would try. Humans are very good at predicting behavior. We've been studying warfare since before your species had written language. We knew that the moment we looked weak, someone would attack. This is madness, Vrith said. We're not your enemy. The Krell are your enemy. You became our enemy the moment you attacked our territory, Zhang said. The Krell started this war, but you decided to join it. That was your choice. 53 Vrax ships escaped. 47 were destroyed. News of the defeat spread through the galaxy within hours. But some species didn't believe it. Some thought it was propaganda. Some thought the Vrax had simply been unlucky or incompetent. The Keldon hierarchy decided to test human defenses themselves. They were more careful than the Vrax. They studied human patrol patterns. They identified what they believed was a weak point in human space. They sent their best fleet, commanded by their finest admiral, a Keldon named Shirkal who had never lost a battle. Shirkal took a different approach. He didn't attack immediately. Instead, he positioned his fleet just outside human territory and waited. He wanted to see how humans would respond to a threat that hadn't quite become an attack. It was a careful, measured strategy. The humans responded by crashing a moon into his fleet. Shirkal didn't even see it coming. The moon was small, barely 3 kilometers across. It had been orbiting a gas giant in an uninhabited system. Human engineers had spent weeks attaching engines to it, calculating trajectories, waiting for someone to position their fleet in exactly the wrong place. When Shirkal's fleet settled into what he thought was a safe position just outside human territory, the moon was already in motion. It had been falling toward them for 6 days, accelerating slowly, building momentum. By the time Keldon sensors detected it, there was no time to escape. A 3-kilometer moon moving at 2% the speed of light doesn't need weapons. Its mass alone is devastating. It hit the center of the Keldon formation and continued through it like it wasn't there. 17 warships simply ceased to exist. The shockwave destroyed 30 more. The survivors fled in complete disorder. Shirkal survived only because his flagship had been at the edge of the formation. He sat in his damaged command chair, staring at the tactical display that showed where his fleet used to be. A human transmission reached him. You were waiting to see if we'd attack first. You were testing our rules of engagement. Here's what you need to understand. We don't have rules. We have objectives. Our objective is to make sure nobody ever attacks humanity again. Your fleet was a threat. We eliminated it. The fact that you hadn't fired yet was irrelevant. The transmission ended. Shirkal looked at the data his sensors had collected about the moon. The humans had seen his fleet forming up days before he arrived. They had predicted where he would position his ships. They had calculated everything perfectly. They're not fighting a war, his tactical officer said quietly. They're teaching a class, and we're the examples. News of the Keldon disaster spread even faster than the Vrax defeat. Now the galaxy was beginning to understand. This wasn't just about the Krell. This was about every species that had ever considered humans weak. This was about changing the fundamental balance of power in the galaxy. The Thalid Collective canceled their planned operations. The Jin Empire recalled their fleets. The Arathi clans, who had been quietly positioning ships near human trade routes, suddenly discovered urgent business on the other side of the galaxy. But one species didn't listen. The Zoneth, a young race that had achieved spaceflight only 200 years ago, saw opportunity in the chaos. They believed the galaxy was overreacting. They believed humans couldn't possibly be as dangerous as the rumors suggested. They sent a small raiding party to capture a human colony transport. Just one ship, an easy target. They thought they could take hostages, demand concessions, and escape before human military forces could respond. The transport they attacked was carrying 300 colonists to a new world. Families, children, scientists and farmers and teachers. It had no weapons, no military escort. It looked perfect. The Zoneth ship surrounded the transport and demanded surrender. The human captain asked for time to consider. The Zoneth granted it. That was their fatal mistake. They didn't know that every human civilian ship had an emergency beacon. They didn't know that human military doctrine prioritized civilian protection above everything else. They didn't know that attacking human civilians was the one thing guaranteed to bring humanity's full wrath down on your head. A human response fleet arrived within 40 minutes. They didn't negotiate. They didn't demand surrender. They simply destroyed every Zoneth ship and then followed their trajectory back to their home system. The Zoneth homeworld woke up to find human warships in orbit and a simple message broadcast on every frequency. You attacked our civilians. Your military is now disbanded. Your weapons are now confiscated. Your government is now supervised. This is not a negotiation. 8 months after the war began, the Krell Dominion formally surrendered. War Prime Kethrak transmitted the surrender personally from a bunker deep beneath his homeworld's surface. His proud empire had been reduced to rubble. His mighty fleet was scattered debris. His territorial ambitions were ash. Ambassador Chen received the surrender aboard the human dreadnought Inevitable Consequence, positioned in orbit above the Krell homeworld. She had aged years in the past months. Her hair had gone almost completely gray, but her eyes remained sharp and clear. "We accept your surrender," she said. "Here are the terms. You will immediately cease all military operations. You will dismantle your war fleet. You will submit to galactic oversight of your government. You will pay reparations to the human colonies you attacked, and you will publicly acknowledge that you were warned and chose not to listen." Kethrak's massive form seemed to have shrunk. His armor was scarred. His voice was hollow. "We agree to all terms." "Good," Chen said. "One more thing. Every Krell child will learn what happened here. Every school will teach about the war, about how it started, about what happened when you mistook human kindness for weakness. Future generations of Krell need to understand the cost of ignoring warnings. They will learn," Kethrak said quietly. "We have learned." The transmission ended. Chen stood looking at the Krell homeworld below. Cities were dark. Infrastructure was damaged. Millions of Krell were suffering from lack of food and medical supplies. Human ships were already organizing relief efforts. That was the other side of humanity. They would crush you completely, then help you rebuild. Both approaches were equally methodical. The Galactic Council met again, this time to discuss terms for ending the wider conflict. The Vrax Confederacy had already agreed to massive concessions. The Keldan hierarchy was negotiating reparations. The Zoneth were under direct human supervision. Other species that had considered attacking humanity were desperately trying to prove they had always been friendly. Chen addressed the Council from the same platform where she had warned them 8 months earlier. "Humanity is prepared to cease military operations. But first we require acknowledgement from every species here. You need to understand what happened and why." The Archon ambassador, who had watched with increasing concern as the war unfolded, stood to speak. "Ambassador Chen, we understand. Humanity is more dangerous than we realized. You have made your point." "No," Chen said. "You still don't understand. You think we showed you our strength? That's not what happened. We showed you our restraint." Confused murmurs filled the chamber. Chen pulled up a holographic display. It showed human military assets that had been active during the war. Ships, weapons, personnel. The numbers were impressive. Then the display changed. It showed human military assets that had never been deployed. Assets that had remained in storage unused throughout the entire conflict. The numbers were 10 times larger. "Everything you saw," Chen said, "was maybe 10% of what we're capable of. We fought this war with a fraction of our strength because we wanted to make a point without causing more destruction than necessary." She pulled up more data. Weapon systems that had never been fired. Ship designs that had never been built. strategies that had been planned but never implemented. The assembled ambassadors stared in silence. We could have destroyed the Krell homeworld, Chen continued. We could have rendered it uninhabitable. We could have pursued every Krell ship to the edge of the galaxy. We could have eliminated their entire species. We didn't. We took their military capability away and left their people alive. That was mercy. The Zephron ambassador pulsed a sickly yellow color. Then what was the point? Why fight at all if you're going to show mercy at the end? Because, Chen said patiently, we needed you to learn something specific. Not that humans are strong. Not that humans are dangerous. You needed to learn that when humans say please, you should listen. Our politeness is not weakness. Our compromise is not cowardice. Our warnings are not bluffs. When a human says, please don't make us angry, what they're really saying is, I'm trying to avoid showing you how terrible we can be. She looked around the chamber at all the assembled species. For 30 years we said please. We negotiated. We compromised. We gave up things we wanted to avoid conflict. And you learned the wrong lesson? You thought we were afraid to fight. The truth is, we were afraid of what we'd become if we started fighting. New images appeared. Human soldiers looking at the destruction they'd caused. Human commanders making decisions that cost thousands of lives. Human civilians watching their military operate with ruthless efficiency. Every image showed the same thing. Humans who were good at violence but hated being good at it. We know what war costs, Chen said. We've paid that price before. We tried to save you from paying it too, but you wouldn't listen. So we taught you the hard way. The Archon ambassador's ancient voice filled the chamber. And now? What happens now that we've learned this lesson? Chen was quiet for a long moment. Now we go back to saying please. We return to compromise and negotiation. We try to be the peaceful species we want to be. But now when we say please, you'll know what we're really saying. You'll know what we're holding back, and hopefully that knowledge will make you more careful. You want us to be afraid of you, the Thalid representative said. It wasn't a question. Yes, Chen admitted, because fear breeds caution. Caution prevents conflict. We'd rather you be afraid of us and leave us alone than test us again and force us to do this again. The Council accepted humanity's terms. Universal non-aggression protocols were signed. Binding arbitration systems were established. Every species acknowledged that humanity's peaceful nature was a choice, not a requirement. The official end of the conflict was marked with ceremonies and speeches, but the real message was simpler. It spread through the galaxy in whispered conversations and classified briefings. It became common wisdom passed from one species to another. It was taught to military officers and diplomats and intelligence analysts. The message was this: when humans say please, they mean it. Listen to them. Because if you make them stop saying please, you'll discover why they were saying it in the first place. Ambassador Chen returned to Earth for the first time in a year. She stood in the memorial garden at the United Earth headquarters, looking at the names carved in stone. Names of humans who had died in the war. Names of aliens who had died in the war, all of them casualties of a conflict that could have been avoided. Secretary General Webb found her there as the sun was setting. It's over, he said. Is it? Chen asked. We changed the galaxy. We showed them what we're capable of. That changes us too. We can't go back to what we were. No, Webb agreed. But we can choose what we become next. That's what makes us human. We can always choose. They stood together in silence, watching the sun set on a galaxy that had learned an expensive lesson about the nature of human kindness. 20 years had passed since the war. A new generation had grown up in the galaxy that emerged from the conflict. They learned about the war in school, studied it in military academies, and referenced it in diplomatic negotiations. The phrase, please don't make us angry, had entered common usage across 47 species as shorthand for catastrophic warning ignored. Ambassador Chen had retired from diplomatic service 10 years earlier. She lived on Earth now, in a small house overlooking the Pacific Ocean. She spent her days tending a garden. It was a memorial garden, open to the public, where the names of every casualty from the war were carved into black stone walls. Human and alien names together, arranged alphabetically, making no distinction between species or sides. She was pruning roses when she noticed a visitor. A young Krell, barely into adulthood, stood at the entrance to the garden looking uncertain. Krell rarely came to Earth. The memories of the war were still painful for both species. Chen wiped her hands on her apron and walked over. "Welcome," she said. "Can I help you?" The young Krell bowed in the human fashion. "Ambassador Chen, my name is Thelios. I am a student at the Galactic History Institute. I am writing my thesis about the war. I hoped you might speak with me." Chen studied him for a moment. He was young enough that he would have been a child during the war. Probably he had grown up in the aftermath, learning about his species' defeat from history books and scarred parents. "Walk with me," Chen said. They walked through the garden together. Thelios looked at the names carved into the walls. He stopped at one section where Krell names were listed. His hand touched one name gently. "My father's cousin," he said quietly. "He died in the siege. I never met him." "I'm sorry," Chen said. Thelios looked at her in surprise. "You're sorry? But he was trying to take your colonies. He was the enemy." "He was a person," Chen said. "The war wasn't his fault. He was following orders from leaders who made bad decisions. Most of the people who died in the war were just following orders or protecting their homes. That's why their names are here. To remember that war costs everyone." They walked in silence for a while. Finally, Thelios spoke. "Why did you warn us? Before the war, I mean. You kept saying please. You kept trying to negotiate. My thesis research shows that humanity issued 47 separate warnings to the Krell Dominion. Why did you try so hard?" Chen sat down on a bench overlooking the ocean. Thelios sat beside her. "Because we knew what was coming," she said. "We knew what we would have to do if you pushed us. We didn't want to do it. We wanted so badly to avoid it. But you won," Thelios said, confused. "You crushed the Krell Dominion. You defeated every species that challenged you. Why would you have wanted to avoid that?" Chen pulled out a small tablet and showed him something. Historical footage from human wars before first contact. Cities burning. Refugees fleeing. Children crying over dead parents. Soldiers with hollow eyes. The endless grinding machinery of human warfare perfected over 10,000 years of practice. "That's what humans do when we fight," Chen said. "That's what we're capable of. We spent 300 years after our last great war trying to become something different. We built a society based on cooperation instead of competition. We made kindness into a strength instead of a weakness. We taught ourselves to say please and thank you and to mean it." She switched the display to show footage from the Krell War. Human forces operating with terrifying efficiency. Strategies that were brilliant and brutal in equal measure. Victory after victory purchased with calculated ruthlessness. "When the war started, we had to become what we used to be," Chen continued. "We had to unlock all the things we'd locked away. We had to use all the knowledge we'd spent centuries trying to forget. And it worked, we won. But winning cost us something too." "What did it cost?" Thelios asked. "Our innocence," Chen said. "Before the war, we could believe we'd really changed. We could believe we'd become a peaceful species. After the war, we knew the truth. We're still what we always were. We're just choosing every day not to act on it. That's a heavier burden than you might think." Thelios was quiet, thinking. Then he asked the question he'd come to ask. "Do you regret it? The war, I mean. All the destruction. All the death. Do you wish you'd just surrendered the colonies?" Chen looked out at the ocean for a long time before answering.
"No," she said finally.
"Because if we'd surrendered, you would have taken more. And when you took more, other species would have seen that we were prey. They would have taken more too. Eventually, we would have had to fight anyway, but from a much weaker position. The war was inevitable once the Krell attacked. We just chose when and how to fight it. So the warnings were meaningless?" Thelios said. "You were always going to fight?" "No," Chen said firmly. "The warnings were real. We gave the Krell War Prime every possible chance to back down, every chance to avoid the war. He chose not to take them. That's not the same thing as the warnings being meaningless. We meant every word. We desperately wanted him to listen." She stood up and walked to one of the memorial walls. She touched a name. Human. A young soldier who had died in the first battle at New Hope. "This was Miguel Torres," Chen said. He was 19 years old. He wanted to be a teacher. He died because Krell leadership thought human warnings were bluffs. That's the cost of not listening. Real people die. On both sides. Thelios stood beside her. "We learn about the war in school. We're taught that the Krell made a mistake, that they should have listened to the warnings. But I wanted to understand why you gave the warnings in the first place. Most species would have just attacked back without warning." "Most species haven't nearly destroyed themselves," Chen said. "Humans have. We know what total war looks like because we've done it to ourselves. We know the cost. We tried to save the Krell from learning that cost the hard way. They didn't listen, so we had to teach them. Thelios pulled out his own tablet and showed Chen something. It was a current newsfeed. Stories about trade agreements being negotiated, diplomatic disputes being resolved through arbitration, species cooperating on scientific research. It worked, he said. The galaxy is more peaceful now. Not because everyone likes each other, but because everyone remembers what happened when they ignored human warnings. Is that a good thing? Chen asked. Peace based on fear? It's better than war based on misunderstanding, Thelios replied. My generation has grown up in a galaxy where humans say please and everyone listens. We know what happens if we don't listen. Maybe that's not perfect peace, but it's peace. Chen smiled sadly. I hope so. I hope the lesson lasts, because if it doesn't, if some new generation forgets why we say please, then we'll have to teach the lesson again. And that's the last thing any of us want. They walked through the garden together for another hour. Thelios asked questions. Chen answered them honestly, holding nothing back. When he finally left, he bowed again in the human fashion. Thank you, Ambassador. You've helped me understand. Understand what? Chen asked. Why humans seem so sad when they talk about winning the war. You won, but you lost something too. You lost the belief that you'd really changed. After he left, Chen stood alone in the garden as the sun set. She thought about his words. He was right, in a way. The war had cost humanity its innocence. They had learned they couldn't escape their nature. They could only choose not to act on it. But maybe that was enough. Maybe choosing to be peaceful every single day, knowing you could be violent if you wanted to, was the truest form of strength. Maybe saying please while having the power to demand was the most human thing of all. The sun set over the Pacific. The memorial garden's lights came on, illuminating the names carved in stone. Human and alien together, all of them reminders of what happens when warnings go unheeded. And somewhere in the galaxy, a new generation was learning a simple lesson. When humans say please, listen to them. Because the alternative is learning why they were saying it in the first place. The universe had learned that lesson 20 years ago. It had been an expensive education, but it was a lesson that hopefully would never need to be taught again.